are prosperous with that music, I'll tell you what. Okay. So, I want to thank the people who helped in this ministry, at least some of them. I know I don't remember everybody every week. I want to give thanks to Norm Burkert, who always holds our Wednesday noon prayer service. I really appreciate that. Judy Fridd, who filled in for Healing Circle this week. Our chaplains for coming to the meeting, the 27 people who came to the Crucial Conversations seminar. That was great. And then we had food for thought first Thursdays, something like that. And there was about 25 people there, so that was fun. And we stuck to New Thought questions, so that was good. Donna for downloading the messages. The messages on Sunday are downloaded by Monday, which is great. And for Pat Bennett for always all her assistance. Donna, there we go. I got it. You sure? Yeah, that's good. Okay, so a couple of announcements. If you're intending to join the church in 2 weeks, which is August 23rd, the applications are due next Sunday, and they're over there on that table. Yeah, I do see them over there. And then Unity Basics, if you've never attended Unity Basics in the church, that's going to be taught on Monday, August 17th. And let's see, last Sunday we had to get to know the minister a little better, and the minister gets to know you a little better, so we had 6 or 7 people that stayed for that. And we're going to do another one next Saturday at about 12:30, I believe. So if you'd like to participate in that, there's a sign up. I just like about 7 people. I can't really keep the stories in my mind when it's more than that, so that helps me. Okay, a couple jokes here. Let's see. Sunday school teacher was discussing the 10 Commandments with her 5- and 6-year-old. She says, after explaining the commandment to honor thy father and thy mother, she says, is there a commandment that teaches us how to treat our brothers and sisters? Without missing a beat, a little boy, the oldest of the family, said, thou shalt not kill. One little girl was sitting and watching her mother do the dishes in the kitchen sink. Suddenly she noticed that her mother had several white hairs sticking out of her bonnet. And so she looked at her mom and she said, why are some of your hairs white? And the mother said, well, you know, every time you do something wrong and make me cry or unhappy, one of my hairs turns white. The little girl thought about it for a minute and she had this revelation. She said, Mommy, how come all of Grandma's hairs are white? And then this one looks familiar, but it's probably been a while. Kids were lined up in the cafeteria at a Catholic school. And at the head of the table, there was a large pile of apples. The nun made a sign by the apple trays saying, take only one, God is watching. Moving further along the lunch line, at the other end of the table was a large pile of chocolate chip cookies. A child had written a note, take all you want, God is watching the apples. All right, here. So today we're going to talk a little bit about will, and but what I wanted to do is kind of set more of a foundation for why we study the 12 powers. And apparently the Spirit didn't like my first page, so we will not be using that first page since it's not there. And so, you know, some of you that are maybe new to Unity are thinking, you know, what are these powers stuff? Why do we say them every week? And what is this all about? So the 12 powers are, they originated in a number of different ways. Fillmore uses them. They're called spiritual tools, maybe. I like the word technique because, you know, you can have a tool, but if you don't know that the button goes both ways on a power drill, or you can turn the knob on a ratchet to make it go in reverse, you don't have full usage of the tool. So I like the word technique. So Fillmore says we have 12 faculties of mind, and that he says that our consciousness and our bodies reflect how well we use these faculties, which are centers of energies. They're also known as chakras. Now some of you might be thinking, well, how come there's 12? Well, in a book by the mystic Manny Hall, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, he says there are 12 prophets, the 12 patriarchs, 12 tribes, 12 apostles. Each group had a certain occult significance, for each refers to the divine duodecimo, or 12-fold deity, whose emanations are manifested in the tangible, created universe through 12 individualized channels. The secret doctrine also taught the priests and the 12 jewels, and these are the jewels that are found, referred to in Exodus, and found in the high priest's breastplates that represent centers of life within our own constitutions. And then when they're unfolded, we're able to absorb all the power into our chakras, or these divine centers, and then radiate the divine light of a deity. So certainly this is no longer a secret, and everybody that knows these truths and practices these truths can evolve to that state of enlightenment, self-realization, or God-realization. So that's why we spend time on them, and we're actually going to co-teach that after Lessons in Truth. And that is as empowering a book as Discover the Power Within, those of you that have taken that. So I encourage you to not fill your fall schedules too much with all those village activities, and think about maybe taking that 12 powers if you've never taken it before. Okay, so we use these all the time is the point of this, and sometimes we don't always use them at the level of consciousness that we wished we used them, right? Because don't you hear some people say, oh, well, I could never get better, or I could never do that, or I could, I mean, if we are radiating centers of divine light and part of God, we can do anything that we want. Okay? So there's a few times in the last couple weeks that I've heard people speak about their unworthiness. And either they were taught as young children that they couldn't do certain things, or they were taught by their siblings, or they were taught raised by grandparents or whatever, that they just weren't good enough to do these kinds of things. And I remember I was reading something in the last couple of weeks. General Grant's mother called him useless Grant. Wow. How's that for, pounding into somebody's head that they might not be good enough? So, and certainly those of us that were part of the Catholic tradition said those words and spoke those words, I am not worthy to receive, blah, blah, blah. So, over weeks and years and decades of having that, there may be this little feeling of unworthiness. And so that's why when people step into a New Thought church and they hear that they're offspring of the divine, that they're not sinners, that by being offspring of the divine they're actually originally blessed, there's a sense of freedom there. And there's a sense of, oh, I don't really have to climb out of a big hole here. I'm not really the sinner. And this kind of resonates with who I am, more of what I believed and thought I was and felt like I was in my soul. So there's real freedom there. So I like the word technique, because technique means a systematic procedure by which a scientific or complex task is accomplished. So how many of us would agree that we're complex? Yeah. And how many of us think that when we try to change a habit, it's fairly complex? Oh yeah. Okay. So, and a part of the reason it's complex is because these things are in us that we're not even aware of sometimes until we maybe get married for the first time, right? And then your first spouse points out all these things. Or something in life triggers these beliefs because they were put in us at an early age, and so sometimes we're not even aware of them. And then if we're not conscious and we're just kind of moving through life, our subconscious mind, as we all know, runs our lives 95% of the time. And so this faculty will, this month that we're studying, that is a really good one. Now, how could we put this into practice? Well, we all got up when we got here, and we got here on time, because we want to grow spiritually, don't we? Yeah. I mean, that's why we didn't stay in bed with that third cup of coffee and read the New York Times or do something else. We came here because there's an impetus in us that wants us ourselves to grow spiritually. So what could be standing in the way of that? Well, I'm not good enough, or you know, that's for smarter people, or, hey man, I really just come for the soup. And so, you know, if we use that power of will, we might say to ourselves, well, what do I want to do this month of August? You know, it's not such a busy month. Maybe I have a little bit more time to spend on my spiritual development. Well, what if I kind of tune into myself a couple times a day? You know, maybe once every hour if I'm really ambitious. If you're like a Pam over there, she would probably do it once every hour. But maybe before we eat our 3 squares, or before we go to bed and upon awakening, we kind of check into how we're thinking, where our consciousness is. Maybe we could set that. I mean, I'm inviting you to, so you know, you might want to. And as we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to find out, you know, where our mind is roving, aren't we?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so then we're kind of filled with an awareness of how we're using our mind, you know. So we might, you know, either set the timer on our watch or on our phone, or we sit down with a meal and we're like, oh, what are we supposed to do this week? Oh yeah, she said to like tune in. Now what have I been thinking about? Gosh, that neighbor's dog, or gosh, you know, that neighbor, I can't believe they put up that fence, or gosh, this or that or the other thing. Or maybe you're thinking about that person that bumped your cart in Publix and they didn't apologize, or maybe you're thinking about something that happened 30 years ago. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, why am I thinking about that? Or maybe you're still mad at your spouse from last night for fill in the blank. Whatever, right? So this technique then is asking us to kind of go, wow, that's like taking up good mind time. Do I really want to do that? So we want to like look at it and go, why am I spending more than 10 seconds on it? Somebody says if you spend more than 10 seconds on something, a grudge, that it sticks to you. And we know we want to be like Teflon, don't we? Just kind of let it bounce off, let it go. So, and you know, new thought is a movement. So we are moving in consciousness, aren't we? We don't want to be the same today as we are next year, do we? No. We want to grow in consciousness. We want to evolve. We don't want to be the same thing. We don't want to be doing the same things. We don't want to be thinking the same thoughts. Okay. So let's see. So how many have realized and experienced in their life that sometimes when you just make small, subtle changes, it totally shifts your life? Anybody experience that? Yeah. Okay. So what it takes is being willing and ready, self-disciplined, and persistent. Okay. So will, that faculty, where is it located? In the brain. You got it. So that faculty is one of the more reflective in nature. We say that those faculties that are in our heads or kind of in our throat, zeal and power and will and understanding and faith and imagination, they're more our reflective powers. And then our torso powers, those located in our torso, are more our feeling powers, feeling nature. So this is going to take some thought power. And one of the books I was reading says that 4 million years ago, the brain was 35% of the size it is today, and that some scientists believe that it's actually much larger because we're growing in consciousness. So that's kind of pretty cool. Okay, so what would we want to do with this? You know, we have realized that, you know, we've had these thoughts that we're not using our minds right. So we decide we're going to use, you know, the thing about this is we pretty much, when we use a power for the month, we really use all the powers of the month. And so, I mean all of the powers, because it takes all of them in conjunction to really comprehend the power that we're working on. So we're working on will. We find out we're not using our thoughts the way we want. And so we're going to put some order to our mind. And the way we're going to put some order to our mind is through denials and affirmation. Now, denials are the power of elimination. And affirmations can be the power of power. It can be the power of zeal. If like you're really zealous about something that you're trying to accomplish. And you're using your life force. So you are looking at your power of will. You decide you're going to make some changes. And all of a sudden now you've got 4 or 5 powers involved. Order, elimination, the power of zeal, your life force. And you want to use your imagination. Okay, so you know, you have to decide what plan works for you in your life. You know? Maybe it's every time you shut a door this month, you think of the power, because you're thinking about, I'm opening a new door for myself. I'm going to start using these powers, as long as that darn minister's going to keep talking about it. Right? So you have to decide on your plan what works for you, what's going to remind you. So that's using your imagination. And the neurologists tell us if we use our imagination just 1 minute every hour to remember something joyful in our lives, that we can stay more easily in a state of joy. So one of the things we could do with imagination is we can think, okay, now I've had these, I've switched my habits around before, I've gotten rid of some thoughts that I used to think 20 or 30 years ago. I can do this, and you can kind of reflect on that rewarding experience that you had. Remember that first ex, and how maybe you were in a really combative relationship, and then all of a sudden, one day you realize, that was not productive, you want to do something else. Now the other thing that I have heard over the last couple of weeks is people saying that they've made mistakes in their life. They just don't know where to go from here because they've made these mistakes. Mahatma Gandhi, the great pacifist, said freedom is not worth having if it does not include the freedom to make mistakes. How many people feel free about making mistakes? I sure do. I mean, I'll go for it and try it, and if it doesn't work, fine, do something else. And Ernest Holmes says, principle is not bound by precedent. There's no law in the universe that seeks to perpetuate old limitation. So mistake is you actually have taken the wrong thing. Like you went to get a bag of apples, but you took oranges. That's a mistake, right? Yeah. But there are no mistakes in the universe. Everything is there for a purpose, and everything is there so that we can learn from the experience of it. So when we stay stuck in our mistakes, we forget that they're just stepping stones to who we have become and who we are becoming. So we got to really love ourselves, use that power of love to realize that everything that we've gone through has helped us morph into and evolve into who we are today. Okay. So you're contemplating how and why you may have briefly stepped off the track of consciousness you want to stay on. And you're using your power of wisdom or discernment to figure out how you're going to self-correct and how you're going to maybe avoid that situation. I know probably most of the 12-steppers in here have had to give up their friends who were still drinking because they knew if they hung around with the friends that were still drinking, guess what? They weren't going to be successful in accomplishing what they wanted to. So we use our inner strength to know that we can resolve and bring forth whatever we're trying to bring forth. And then we use the power of faith to use it in conjunction with imagination, but also to maybe, in our prayer and meditation time, know that we can do it if we keep up, can't we? Yeah, all right. So here we are, we're working on the power of will, and we have already used the power of wisdom, order, imagination, zeal, love, strength, faith, elimination, and life. So, do you see how they all work together? Yeah. And Elizabeth Santurner says about will, will is the executive power of the mind. It's the focal point around which our actions center. You know, when I heard that dream, the impossible dream that Hector played this morning, and actually I thought yesterday of it as well. There was a woman in my high school class, and I don't know why they did this, but freshman year they give you tests and then they divide kids and they say, well, you're going to be secretaries or whatever, and you're college bound. Well, one of them that was in the secretary pool or class, she's the only MD out of that high school class. So, obviously her executive power of will had something much different than whatever the tests revealed that day. So, and of course the highest office of will is when we align our will with the divine will. And the only way that happens is when we really take the time to listen and cue in. So in the book of John, chapter 16, verse 12, Jesus says in that book, this is when he's telling the disciples, I'm getting ready to leave you, and they're confused and they don't know really how to comprehend this, but he's saying, I'm getting ready to leave you. I have many things yet to say, but you can't hear them now. Okay? You're not ready to hear them now. But what he did say is, you know, the Holy Spirit, the Comforter will tell you, as the Comforter works through all of us, will tell you these truths. And then when you know these truths, when you are able to apprehend these truths, he says these are the truths that will really set you free. So this week, maybe take the opportunity to decide if you want to work with Will, and then how are you going to work with Will, and good luck.